Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for a special look at what our restoration teams are up to in a ship live in the Gulf of Mexico. My name is Erin Spencer. I will be your host today. I am a marine ecologist and the communications manager for the mesophotic and deep benthic communities portfolio of research. And I know that is a lot of big words, and so we're going to cover what a lot of that means before we get to some of our folks on the ship. And first, we are going to discuss the background of this expedition, and we're going to talk to our friends on a ship named the Island Intervention, which is a 394-foot ship located in the Gulf of Mexico, and they've been traveling around, but right now they are about 150 miles south of New Orleans. We are so excited to have you here today to hear what it's like to be on this ship for days, or in some folks' case, even weeks at a time, to conduct this important restoration work. Today, we'll be taking a deep dive into the experiences specifically of women on board, working in marine science and working out in the field and in vessels at sea. So as we're going along, please share any questions that you have in the chat, and I'll make sure that we get those over to our folks on board. Before we go to our live stream, I want to give you a little background into this body of work, and that all starts in the Gulf of Mexico. So as you go deeper into the ocean, like the underwater robot you see here, which is what is known as a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, less and less sunlight is able to penetrate the water. At about 160 feet down, you reach the mesophotic zone, which literally means middle light, and is sometimes referred to as the twilight zone. As you travel even deeper, you will eventually reach a point where there's no sunlight at all. In addition to this change in light, the water will also get much colder and there's much higher pressure. Despite the low light, cold temperatures, and high pressure environment, there's an incredible ecosystem that calls the seafloor home at these deep depths. Colorful corals and sponges are the foundation of these ecosystems and provide habitat for many of the fish and invertebrates you see here. These deep sea ecosystems are found all over the world, including in the Gulf of Mexico, which is where all this beautiful footage you see is from. There's so much we still need to learn about the deep sea because exploring these depths can be difficult and requires expensive, highly technical equipment and unique skills. However, what we do know about the deep sea is that it is the largest habitat on Earth. The number of species and abundance of life that depends on these habitats may even rival the colorful coral reefs found in shallow coastal waters or tropical rainforests on land. Unfortunately, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in April 2010 dealt a heavy blow to Gulf communities on land and at sea. 11 people lost their lives, and natural resources, wildlife, and habitats across the northern Gulf were severely impacted. Restoration is particularly challenging for the deep coral habitats that were injured because of how far from shore and how deep they are, and because of how much we still have to learn about them. As a result, 4 restoration projects are currently underway to help us better understand and restore these seafloor ecosystems from 160 feet to thousands of feet below the surface. The 4 projects are mapping new areas and developing better maps of the seafloor in the Gulf of Mexico so we know where these coral habitats are found, learning more about the species that live in these habitats and how they may be connected across the Gulf of Mexico, collecting samples and testing different methods to help corals grow and reproduce in the wild and in labs, and working to reduce the threats that these ecosystems face and connecting this restoration network to people like you. This work is made possible by the Deepwater Horizon Open Ocean Trustees, including the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, the U.S. Geological Survey, or USGS, and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, plus many, many partners, including a large number of academic institutions and non-governmental organizations. Now, this whole body of work has many different expeditions that go out throughout the year, but the one that we're going to see today is really extra special because it is one of the first significant NOAA Navy collaborations in the Gulf of Mexico. And if you've been tuning into some of our other live streams, you've heard about some of the Navy saturation diving that's going on there. It also marks the deepest dive by humans for a NOAA science and restoration mission, and one of just a handful of times that saturation diving has been used at sea for a NOAA mission. So all of that introduction aside, I think it's time that we jump on board with folks on the island intervention. So let's see, is our live stream up and running? Guys, can you hear me? I'm starting to see folks. Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. As we know, when you're working out in the middle of the sea, sometimes technology doesn't always cooperate. So it's so great to see you all. And it looks like it's a beautiful day out there. So I know we've got a lot of folks on screen. I want to start off by, could you please go down the line and introduce yourself and say a little bit about your role in this expedition?
Yeah, I think I'll kick us off. My name is Kelly Martin. I work for NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and I'm one of the project managers for the mesophotic and deep benthic communities restoration work. And I'm also one of the co-field party chiefs that help sort of plan and execute the mission that we're on right now.
I'm Alexis Weinig. I'm with the U.S. Geological Survey. I'm a biologist, but on this expedition, I am collecting eDNA, so environmental DNA, and helping lead the ROV dives at night.
Hi, my name is Caroline, and I also work at U.S. Geological Survey. I am a biologist, and I am here taking deep sea sediment samples, and we're running a few other tests as well.
I'm Jennifer McLean-Counts, also with U.S. Geological Survey, and I'm helping with the sediment samples as well as getting tissues from animals for stable isotope analysis for food web work and particulate organic matter from the water.
I'm Sasha Francis. I'm the Education and Outreach Manager for this set of restoration projects. So I'm here to help set up this telepresence event and gather some photo and video and support all the awesome science work that these ladies and other folks on board are doing.
Hey everyone, I'm Claire Mullaney. I'm the Threat Reduction Coordinator for the Mesophotic and Deep Benthic Communities Restoration Portfolio. And on this mission, that means I'm mostly helping install deep moorings, remove marine debris, and manage some data.
That is awesome. And so we've heard just from the six of you already a lot of different projects and science activities and restoration activities that are happening on board this mission. Could some of you tell us how your work is specifically supporting the restoration of these habitats?
Yeah, I think I can get started on that one. So I mentioned I'm helping to install deep moorings and also remove marine debris. And both of those things help protect these deep sea sensitive habitats. With deep moorings, that allows boats that might otherwise anchor in these sensitive areas and potentially cause some bottom damage to just tie up to those moorings and avoid making any contact with the bottom at all. And removing marine debris prevents hazardous materials or other types of man-made materials from sitting in that environment, potentially entangling organisms, and also releasing sort of chemicals or pieces of plastic that could be ingested by organisms, just to name a few examples of how those could potentially harm the environment. So yeah, getting us started with that.
I guess I could take it next. So a lot of people don't know that these habitats exist at all. I definitely wasn't as familiar with them before I started this work. So one of my biggest jobs is to make people more aware that these habitats exist in the deep Gulf. A lot of people are familiar with the really shallow corals that we have all around the country or all around the world and in the Gulf of Mexico, but they're not really aware that there's a lot of corals also really, really deep down, including like a mile down or beyond. So I'm really excited to be a part of the restoration here, to be able to let people know what exists out there and share it widely with opportunities like this. Anybody else?
So one of our jobs is looking at the animals living in the sediments as well as the environmental conditions. So looking at grain size, metals, hydrocarbons, and seeing how those communities exist near these deep seas. We've been pretty fortunate getting samples pre-oil spill as well as post-oil spill. And so we're seeing how that oil spill had impacted the communities, how they're changing, and as recovery efforts are have been ongoing, how those communities continue to change.
And that's some really awesome behind the scenes footage that we're looking at right now in the lab. And is this on board happening right now on this expedition?
Yeah, so that sediment sampling is something both Carolyn and I are doing down in a cold van on deck. And so every night the ROV comes up, and then we spend the next 8 hours processing all the sediment cores for the different analyses.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I'll move on to my next question because, of course, the whole focus of this amazing live stream is this all-star female crew that we have lined up here to chat about their experience and being women in the field. And so I know that at least when I was much younger, I was always really curious about the path that folks would take to lead them to a job like this. So could some of you share a little bit about your background and maybe some of the job or academic steps that you took to get a job like what you have now?
Yeah, so I think as you sort of said, Erin, what's really cool about this group here is we're all sort of diverse positions, and I'm sure no two of us have taken the same path. So for me, I had a pretty traditional, got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in marine science and policy, but my jobs have spanned from working as an educator in the Bahamas to working in the halls of Congress to now working for NOAA as a project manager. So just sort of lots of different ways, more of a zigzag than a straight line to where I am today. So yeah, I think that's what people who are trying to get in the field now should know, is that it's almost never going to be a straight path. So just sort of take the opportunities as they come and see where that takes you.
Yeah, I can speak more as a scientist, where it requires a lot of going to school. So a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD. So roughly 10 years of studying, but studying things that you care a whole lot about. So I have a bachelor's degree in oceanography, and it led me to a master's degree in conservation biology. And kind of through each step, I became more and more interested with deep sea ecosystems. And it led me deeper and deeper to where I get to study those all day, every day. But that's kind of the path that I've taken. And there's Jenny and I from 2018, I think. So we've been working together a long time, a couple of us, to really understand these habitats and do what we can to protect them.
And my path has also been kind of a zigzag. I got my bachelor's in marine and coastal biology, and then I became a park ranger out in the Midwest. And I've always been really interested in the ocean, and the deep sea is something that I've always kind of wanted to learn about. And then I was able to get this job, and I was able to come out here and help with the restoration work. And it's been really great learning about all of the different creatures that we get to see. And on the screen right now, you see us picking some animals off of an acoustic receiver that was down in the ocean for a couple years. And the collaboration here has been really great as well. And I will be going back to school for my master's. So it's, like I said, it's kind of like a zigzag, like Kelly mentioned earlier. No one path is the same.
And I feel like that zigzagging path, though, hearing about that story can be really helpful to a lot of folks, especially early in their career, because sometimes there's this pressure to feel like you have to have it all figured out right out of high school or undergrad. And so the zigzagging really can be an advantage. And it sounds like that is shown here. And I want to then think back to when you were earlier in your career. Is there a piece of advice that you would give someone, especially a young woman who's trying to start out, or maybe something that you wish you knew when you were starting out in this field?
Yeah, so I would say just don't give up. Just keep persevering. I personally I struggled with a couple of the classes that are required for a major in biology. But just keep going, do what you can, and try not to overthink it, because where you're at in life is okay. Like, you don't have to go through a specific set of steps to get where you are today. So I think that's really important for people to know.
I think it's also important to note that a lot of us that are on board are still relatively young. So you can get to these positions before you're considered much older. It's a much different culture than it used to be. So by the time you're in your late 20s, early 30s, you can be leading expeditions like this if you really want to.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share a piece of advice from like my journey here. You don't count yourself out if you didn't get an advanced education. So I went straight from my bachelor's degree at URI. I'm in animal science and wildlife conservation into being a zookeeper for 13 years and learning about animal behavior. And I couldn't afford to go get a master's at all because of the wages I was making early on in my career. But don't discount the other skills that you have that aren't necessarily education based or have to do with finances. Also incorporate how genuine you are and how well you are connecting with other people in the field and other skill sets that you have to offer. Because it's incredible to see all these women with these awesome advanced degrees, but I unfortunately don't have that. But don't discount yourself with the other skill sets that you have as well.
And I think sort of along those lines, something that I really like to remind young people is that you don't necessarily have to be a scientist to be a part of this work. Something that Sasha and I get to work on together is working with artists to create artwork that connects people to these habitats. So you could be someone who's not into science at all, but you love art and you love the ocean, and like that can absolutely be applied to this type of work. So not only don't discount yourself if you don't have what you would think of as the traditional education, but whatever your interest is, it can probably be applied to this world. So definitely keep that in mind.
And it's really similar to what Kelly said, but even within STEM, there's so many different ways to kind of be a marine scientist. Like even within just biology, there's so many different types of ecosystems to study, but then there's also like computer programming work and data management, ROV piloting, just all kinds of different areas, sociology, education and outreach. So yeah, take, I guess, whatever you're kind of interested in, and I'm sure there's a way to apply it to the ocean.
I think that's such a good thing to remember too. Like every organization, for example, like you need people to run the numbers and be good at the business side or be good at the communication side. I think this is all such really good advice. And I also do appreciate the call out to the fact that most of us are still really young. Here I am saying like young scientists. What I mean is like much younger. Okay, so I like to consider myself also still young. Okay. So I want to then move to a little bit more into the nitty gritty about your jobs. Can you share a little bit about what is your favorite part of the job and what maybe are some of the least favorite parts of your job?
So my favorite part of the job is actually cruises. I love working and collaborating with multiple organizations, all different scientists. I love meeting new people and kind of coming together for one mission of restoration. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that we do, but the overall mission is ocean restoration. And as far as like something that is the worst thing about my job, there's not really something I can honestly say. I spend a lot of time at a microscope when I sort through the sediment samples, and that does sometimes drive me crazy, but the creatures that we find in the sediment make it so much better. So like anytime we find something in the sediment that we've never seen before or that is really, really interesting looking, we have a whole team back at the lab that sorts, and we will all show each other, and it's all like the passion that we have that kind of drives us. And so that's really nice.
Speaking on collaboration, my favorite part is sharing all the awesome work all of you are doing with other people and collaborating with organizations in the community. So zoos and aquariums, museums, just community groups that I get to interact with and show really cool footage from all your work and get people really excited about mud, about creatures in the mud, about ROVs, and even take ROVs to like local pools and really see that spark in people learning about these habitats they never knew existed and learning about all of the different skill sets that are required for these collaborations. So if somebody's really good at video games, suddenly they see this opportunity for themselves to maybe be an ROV pilot someday, like, all these different facets. I love that part of it. My least favorite part is when I'm stuck at my computer too long and I don't get to go talk to people and I don't get to look at me pretending that I know how to drive an ROV. And I don't get to come out here and be out here with all these awesome scientists, but it's still not too shabby.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, I'm going to start with the least favorite and go to the positive thing, which is a lot of my job is sitting at a desk, sending emails and having meetings. And I think Claire and I have had an every Thursday morning meeting for like the last year, planning this mission, but that's what gets us to this point. So even though, it's not the most glamorous thing to sit at a desk and send emails and have meetings, that is, all of that planning leads to something like this, bringing all these amazing people together to work towards a goal. So yeah, maybe not the most fun part, but very worth the effort and, what we get out at the end.
So that actually brings me to my next question. Kelly, you're talking specifically about this mission, and I can see in the chat, Corey here has a question. What is the most interesting or unexpected thing you all have learned thus far or seen or done in this mission?
I'll jump in. I think something that's been interesting for me is, working in this restoration portfolio, we know that we need to map more of the seafloor. We need to get ROVs and all of these other technologies we use to more parts of the seafloor so we can get a better understanding of what's there. But I think over the course of this mission, there's been a number of places where we've sent our ROV or sent our saturation divers, and we weren't 100% sure what was going to be on the seafloor, sort of waiting for them. There's still so much we have to learn. And I think that is something you hear quite a bit. You sometimes hear things like, oh, we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the deep sea, but really sort of experiencing that firsthand of like, we're going to find out what's on the seafloor today at this location has been a really sort of interesting and a good learning experience for me, really reiterating how much more we need to do to understand these communities and then use that information to restore them.
I think I might talk about something more from the logistical perspective. This is like kind of my first major cruise with MDBC, the largest cruise I've been on. I think one of the largest cruises MDBC has done, and just being involved in this intense planning process leading up to it and seeing like firsthand how quickly things can kind of, plans can kind of change and you have to make decisions on the fly. And I guess just the amount of flexibility and on-the-fly planning even involved, or on-the-fly decision-making, even in such like a, intensely planned mission, I think has been not necessarily unexpected, but definitely seeing it in action has been eye-opening for sure.
Right before this telepresence, we had to totally pivot where all the cameras were and where all the mics were. And shout out to Your Eyes Inner Space Center team. Jess, you want to come in here for a second? Because one of our amazing women on board, Jessica, has been running around setting up these cameras and everything this entire time. So shout out to her. She's on the mobile cam right behind the camera right now.
I love it. A little behind the scenes tour. And we have a question now in the chat. Love seeing so many awesome women on board. And I want to interject. I'm just reading the questions, but there's lots of other people cheering you on, watching, saying that how excited they are about this work. Are you still the minority on the expedition team? And what about the crew? And do you see a lot of other women working on board as part of the crew?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. We have a pretty extensive female presence on our expedition team, so that the people we bring on board, which is really great to see. Most maritime work is still very male heavy. So most of the ship's crew is male, most of the ROV team is male. So there's still a lot of work to do in the capacity of more like the industry of seagoing. But we have really made progress as far as the scientists and the outreach and expedition leaders and getting women into those roles.
Quick note, Camila, who asked that question, is one of my sisters who is a sailor herself, and she sailed across the Atlantic while pregnant. So talking about amazing women who asked that question, she's incredible sailor herself.
Okay, well, I definitely know what I want to do for the next live stream then. We'll follow up with you. That sounds amazing. Any other, before I cut off, I want to make sure no one else had anything to say on that, but I do have another question as we're getting down to our last couple minutes. Okay, she says, thank you, Sasha. Okay, so, but on that note, talking about some of how far we've come and some of the capacity building still to come, do you feel like, or have you ever encountered any challenges as a woman in this field? And if so, how did you overcome those challenges?
I mean, I'll start. I think a lot of the challenges that I've experienced haven't necessarily been gender-based, but it's just a very challenging field to work in general. You're always kind of shuffling around. There's always changes that need to be made. And that takes a really flexible type of person to be able to kind of handle that under pressure. And I think, I don't want to call Jenny out, but Jenny has kids, so she probably has something to say about being a mom at sea.
Yeah, there's definitely some challenges with being a mom. I have 2 children at home. They're 10 and 8. And so actually a huge shout out to my husband for being team dad and solo parenting. This is my 3rd expedition this year. Now it's pretty smooth sailing, but 10 years ago, having to take a pump out. And so everyone's been very accommodating. I've not run into issues with that, but having to take breaks from the science in order to pump milk and store that and send it back for my children has been, and then, again, like Alexis said, not necessarily gender based, but on the ROV, the Niskins are mounted really high and I cannot reach them at all. And I have to,
height challenges.
yeah, so height restrictions, but the crew are really helpful and ready to jump in whenever we ask, which is great. So lots of support.
Short kings face that problem too.
That is an important thing to bring up, and also how so many field pants are really long. Can we talk about that? We need more field pants for like 5'2" folks. Okay, well, we are down to our last couple of minutes, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to go around and really just touch on again. If you could say how your kind of some of your takeaways from this expedition and kind of what makes you hopeful as you're continuing to work on in this field as a woman in this field, but also continuing to work on this ecosystem that was broadly injured from this big event many years ago. So what makes you hopeful?
Yeah, if we're just going down the line, I can kick us off. I think something Caroline spoke to at the beginning was the collaboration. The planning process for this mission was massive and required a ton of collaboration. And so just seeing it come to fruition really feels great. And yeah, you see the sort of relationships that are being built and the partnerships. And we know that we're going to be able to continue carrying that forward onto future expeditions. And then even working with the ship's crew on this ship in particular, they're sort of more used to working with like oil and gas industry. And so we've been a very different team for them to work with, and they have been so excited. And so, Sasha sort of talked earlier about seeing the spark that people get when they are introduced to these habitats and the species that you find in them. We've really seen that firsthand working with like the ROV pilots and all the other crew members on the ship. And so sort of seeing that happen in real time just, again, sort of gives me that hope that if we continue to introduce folks to these habitats, they'll care about them and want to, protect them and do work to restore them. So yeah, that leaves me very hopeful coming off of this expedition.
Yeah, some of us have been working in this area for like over 10 years. And so one thing that I think is always really inspirational is the passion that people still have for coming back and continuing to see how these ecosystems are recovering, what changes are happening over time. And that goes from the corals that are down there to what's in the mud, what Jenny and Caroline look at. But every time we come out, everybody's always full throttle, excited about it. And I think that's really important because this is a really long ongoing project. So it requires that real passion to keep it going.
And I kind of spoke about collaboration earlier, but also kind of taking off what my colleagues have said, seeing everyone's passion for helping to restore and do future work out in the ocean is really, really amazing. Like all of these people coming together with one mission. We have the oil and gas crew that are based off this ship, and they want to learn about all of the things that we're doing, the processes that we're doing. They want to learn about the benthic communities that we study. They are very, very interested, and I think just us talking about it and us being able to explain what we do is just phenomenal, and getting other people involved and wanting to also help in this restoration is really great.
Yeah, I think I'm just piggybacking on what everyone has already said is the collaboration and the passion. Every time we think we might answer a question, 10 more pop up. And so keeping that passion going, helping to inspire future scientists, as Alexis said, some of us have been doing this a really long time. So letting the next generation, pick up the torch and just continue the work. We're definitely finding a lot of passionate people and people willing to support each other, which is great.
Yeah, and being able to come out to see when oftentimes I am, behind a computer, It's really incredible because it really fuels like the storytelling that I'm able to do to people in the community, you know, different partners, and that's really important. For the first time ever today, I got to see a squat lobster in real life, and I've been showing people in the community and online and whatnot photos of these little squat lobsters, and I finally got to see one. And so again, just re-sparking my excitement about these projects so I can share it with others is really brings me a lot of hope, because yeah, there's just so much to talk about, so much to see.
Kind of in keeping with the Women in Science theme of this live stream, I was just so excited to get on board and see so many amazing women leading different teams, you know, doing amazing work, really focused and passionate, like everyone else has said. And that really gives me hope that, you know, the diversity in marine science will continue to increase. You know, it's not perfect yet. We've come a long way, and that we can just continue to get new perspectives and to help us really nail this restoration work that we're doing and other projects as well. And yeah, it just gives me hope for the future in general.
Well, I think that is a perfect way to wrap up. First, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day full of science and restoration to chat with us today. It is so fun to hear from you and see everyone together doing great work. Thank you all for joining us on the live stream. Really grateful for your questions and to have you here. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I have really good news. We have a number of other live streams that we have done on this vessel and from previous expeditions, and we've got more to come. So I would encourage you to check it out on the University of Rhode Island Interspace Center YouTube page. And also, if you would please just take a couple of moments to do a feedback form for us to make sure we can continue to have these be the best that they can be as far as the live streams. And then at the end, there's going to be a little QR code that pops up that you can take a picture and do that little survey as well, and learn more about the mesophotic and deep benthic community's work. So thank you all again so much for joining, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Sweet.